Today on America's Test Kitchen, Julia prepares Thai chicken curry with potatoes and peanuts. Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of 5-spice powder. And Bridget makes Chinese braised beef right here on America's Test Kitchen.
It is true that the term curry does come from southern India, curry, which means a spicy sauce. But of course, curries are not just Indian. They come from Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Ethiopia, Thailand, even Japan. They have a spicy stew. Today you're doing Massaman curry from Thailand. It's a very specific kind of curry. It's warm, slightly sweet, slightly spicy, kind of like me. Slightly sweet and slightly spicy.
And very complex.
And very complex. The problem, of course, is you can't get a lot of the ingredients here easily, so your job is to reconfigure it for the home kitchen in this country.
So the recipes we found for traditional Massaman curries had a ton of spices. It included things like galangal and tamarind, which aren't easy to find in our supermarkets. So we're going to start with the chilies, and we're going to use New Mexican chilies, which are the easiest to find in our American supermarkets. And we're going to toast them in a 350-degree oven. You can see they've puffed up a little bit, and they're very fragrant. And it doesn't take too long. So we're going to set these aside.
Like, how long would that be?
Just
like 4 or 5 minutes?
Yeah, exactly, 4 to 5 minutes. And you know, when we were developing the recipe for this curry paste, we tried skipping this step because it is kind of a pain to toast chilies, and now we're going to broil the garlic and the shallots. But when we did side-by-side comparisons of these things untoasted and broiled versus their toasted and broiled counterparts, it was night and day. So the rest of the work I will make easy, but you need to toast the chilies and broil these shallots, and this is 4 shallots and 7 cloves of garlic. And I'm just going to leave the skins on, and we're going to run these under the broiler until they get softened and slightly charred. Oh, that smells good. So these shallots and garlic have been broiling for about 6 minutes or so. And you can see they're a little bit charred, and if you squeeze them, they're nice and soft. I'll be a little hot. So we're going to let them cool before we peel them. Meanwhile, I've been taking the stems and the seeds out of these chilies now that they're cool. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's pretty simple. You take off the stem, and then you just shake out the seeds as best you can. And then we're just going to break the chili up into biggish pieces, 1.5 inches. And now we're ready to start blending this all up into a paste. So we're going to start just with the chilies, and then we're going to pulse them until they're a nice fine powder. That takes about a minute or so. So now we're going to add the rest of the ingredients for the paste. And we're going to start with some ginger, and this is 1/2 cup of peeled ginger that's chopped. Ginger, a really important part of Massaman curry. So there's some ginger. We're going to add a little bit of water, and that's 1/4 cup of water. A little bit of lime juice. This is 1.5 tablespoons of lime juice. You know, usually when we cook with lime juice, we add it at the end of a dish to help keep its flavor bright. But here we liked it when it was cooked down and it was mellowed a bit. Now we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And that oil will really help to bring out the flavor of the spices because, again, spices are oil soluble. A little bit of fish sauce, and this is traditional. Fishy.
It smells good, though.
It does smell good. This is just 1 tablespoon of fish sauce. And so now we're going to add a teaspoon of 5-spice powder, which again is a collection that you can find spices sold pre-mixed. Then we're going to add a little bit of cumin. This is 1/2 teaspoon cumin and 1/2 teaspoon black pepper. So moving on to the shallots and the garlic, which hopefully have cooled by now. They have. We're just going to cut off the stem end, peel away the paper, and you can see that nice toasted piece of garlic, and it's quite soft too. I'm going to add this right to the blender. So that's 7 cloves of toasted garlic, and then these 4 shallots. Going to do the same thing, just peel off the papery skins. You can see that nice caramelized shallot roasted underneath. We're going to cut off that stem end, just add it right to the blender jar. All right, so now we're going to blend this up in the blender till it's nice and smooth, and that can take 2 to 3 minutes. Doesn't that look good? Nice and smooth? Smells good too. And you know, you could double this recipe and save a portion of it for another time because it holds really well.
Just spread it on toast in the morning. You know, Julia mentioned something about taking this paste and dissolving in oil and cooking it to bloom the flavor. Well, there's some science behind that. You know, organic compounds have 3 major atoms in them. They have carbon, they have hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon is neutral, hydrogen is positive, oxygen is negative. Of course, opposites attract in chemistry. So H2O, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, is positive. Sugar, for example, has lots of oxygen atoms. It's negative, so it dissolves nicely in water. An organic compound like spices, however, don't have many oxygen atoms, a lot of carbon, so it does not dissolve in water. Oil, however, also has a lot of carbon atoms, and there is something called a weak force, called the van der Waals force, which means that carbon attracts carbon. So if you want to dissolve that paste, those spices, in oil, you'll get a lot more blooming and a lot more flavor.
All right, so we are ready to start building our curry. And what I have in this pot is a teaspoon of vegetable oil. And to that, we're going to add the curry paste we just made. Oh, it smells good. And of course, we just want to cook it out for a couple minutes till it starts to darken and the fragrance starts to get a little bit more complex. While you do that, I'm going to finish prepping some of the ingredients for the curry itself. First, we're going to prep some potatoes. We're going to leave the skins on, the peels on, and just cut it into 3/4 inch size pieces. These are Yukon Gold. That's a pound of Yukon Golds. And I'm also going to cut up 1 onion, and much like the Yukon Golds, I'm going to cut it into 3/4 inch pieces. And I took off the tip and the tail of the onion. I'm going to peel off any papery outer skin. I'm going to cut it once this way, and then like a rainbow, across all the layers into nice pieces. So into this, I noticed you pulled it off the heat so it didn't burn. I appreciate that. We're going to add some chicken broth. This is 1 1/4 cups chicken broth. Now we're going to add the coconut milk. And again, there's that cream topping, and then behind it's all that nice coconut milk liquid. And again, this is a traditional flavor in a massaman curry, all this coconut milk. It's looking good. So now we're going to add some peanuts, and these are dry roasted peanuts, 1/3 cup. We're not going to chop them, we're just going to add them in. A little bit of salt, 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. We're also going to add our potatoes. Again, that was a pound of Yukon Gold potatoes. And our onion. So we're going to bring this to a simmer and cook it till those potatoes are just nearly tender, and that'll take about 12 minutes. Oh, it is such a good smell. And what we're looking for is that the potatoes are pretty much tender, and you can just test that with a paring knife, and you can see the knife really slid easily all the way through the potato. So now it's time to add the chicken. And as with most of our chicken stews, we like to use thighs because they can stand up to the heat and the flavor of things like that curry. And all we have to do is cut it into stew-sized pieces, 1-inch chunks. And when you're cutting it up, you want to just trim away any little bits that look not so nice, little bits of gristle or fat. So we're going to add a pound of chicken thighs, and we're just going to stir it into the simmering curry and let them cook through, and that takes about 10 to 12 minutes. Oh, it just smells so good. So now I'm going to add a finishing touch of some lime zest, and this is 2 teaspoons of finely grated lime zest. We're just going to stir this in.
You know what I'm thinking now?
What's that?
If you could stop talking, then we could get to the eating part.
Deal. Now I'm going to put some rice in the bottom of your bowl. Oh. And finish it with a little bit of cilantro. It just smells amazing.
I don't think you could actually describe this. This is too complicated and too delicious to describe.
Yeah, it's not spicy, but it's deep and complex. Little hint of those chilies, but again, it's not spicy.
Well, it's like me, warm and slightly sweet. or not. So the secret to making an authentic Thai chicken curry that you could actually make at home started really with the curry paste. That was the big deal. We roasted the chilies, we broiled the shallots and the garlic, and used that as the basis for our paste. 5-spice powder as well, and lots of ginger. Then we cooked that paste briefly in oil to get the flavor bloomed. Add the coconut milk, peanuts, and potatoes. And finally, boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So there you have it for America's Test Kitchen and your kitchen. Are easy to do, but absolutely fabulously delicious. Can I add more adjectives to that? Thai chicken curry. Once in a while, Jack likes to noodle around in the dark recesses of your food pantry at home, and he's done that today with 5-spice powder. I'm not even sure if I know what spices are in 5-spice. Are there 5 spices in 5-spice powder?
You will find out, Chris. First, I should probably explain why you have glasses of milk in front of you.
Yeah.
They're actually warm glasses of milk that have a little bit of sugar in them to make it a little bit more palatable, and the 5-spice powder. The milk is a good medium because it's got some fat in it, and there are a lot of the flavor compounds in spices are fat soluble as well as water soluble. So milk gives you both fat and water. Rather than diluting it in water, we do it in the milk. A couple things I want you to pay attention to is complexity and overall strength. how many different flavors are you getting and how strong is it? Now, to answer your question about Five Spice, what is Five Spice? This is one of the things what I love about the internet and don't love about the internet. So you go on and you do some research and it says, oh, the 5 spices represent the 5 Chinese parts of the cosmos: earth, metal. And then you're like, water. Well, which spice is water? And no one seems to agree. And then you're like, well, it's the 5 tastes: sweet. And you're like, okay, which one's salty? Because there's no salt in 5 spice powder. The best way to think about it is this is basically a quick flavor builder. It's convenient. It gives you lots of flavors in 1 teaspoon. It's in many ways the Chinese equivalent of curry powder. In terms of what goes into it, there is agreement about the cinnamon, there is agreement about the cloves, and there is agreement about the star anise. And the star anise is really important because it gives you those licorice, piney notes. Most sources agree that there should be Szechuan peppercorns. The problem is that for many years, Szechuan peppercorns were banned in the US because of a citrus blight. And so a lot of US companies stopped making it with Szechuan peppercorns and put white pepper or black pepper in, and really haven't gone back to using the Szechuan peppercorns. And then in terms of the 5th spice, some sources will say that it is fennel, which I have here. Others say anise, others say ginger. We found brands that use all of them, so in fact they have 7 spices in their 5 spice powder. What we didn't like were the ones that were mostly tasting of cinnamon. What we really did like were the ones that had that licorice, piney notes that you get from the fennel, the anise, and most importantly the star anise. So, anything you're noticing in this?
This is one of those tastings where you should taste it once and stop, because it just gets worse and worse and worse, and you get more and more confused. I mean, unlike chocolate, where you actually can get more notes over time. I started here, I'm about here now. So this one I didn't like. I thought it was just like cinnamon, didn't have any of those piney notes at all. It was kind of bland, so that's out. I'm now down to these 2, and you need to talk for another minute.
Well, I will tell you, we did some lab work. So we sent them all out to be analyzed for total amount of volatile oils. It's the volatile oils in any spice that give it its flavor. And that didn't really correlate strictly with tasters' preferences. In fact, one of the brands we didn't particularly like had a lot of volatile oils, but it turned out that that one had a lot of cinnamon, and it was the cinnamon we were objecting to. We then asked the lab to analyze them for the compound that creates that anise flavor, and it's a compound called anethol. And it turned out that that did line up with the tasting results, and that the brands that we were able to measure a large amount of the anethol, said those were our favorites, and the ones that didn't have very much of that, those were at the bottom of the pack. So, not sure if that's helping you at all.
Well, I think you're quite sure it's not helping me. You're trying to confuse me, as you always do.
Yes, well, the more information I give you, the more confused you get, and the less you actually focus on the tasting.
This is hard. I mean, this has a fair amount of flavor, but it doesn't have the piney thing going on. This one seems to have more of the anethol or whatever that active ingredient is. Ooh, I don't know. I hate this. I'm going to, this is the one I like, but I'm going to go for this one, and that was the winner. That's what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going down with a ship, but at least I'm going down. This just has more flavor. And I think this has a little bit more of that other thing, but this clearly had the most amount of flavor. This was a loser. These were close. There is a little bit more of that other piney thing in here, but overall I get more flavor out of this one.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to do.
Would you like to see what you chose?
I don't know.
You did a very good job. You chose the winner. This is Frontier.
Great!
This is the one that we liked the best. We thought it was the most complex, most interesting of the choices.
And the runner-up was?
This is from McCormick.